All right, I believe I am live, and hopefully you can see this, and hopefully we have somebody watching at least. If somehow you've stumbled onto this live stream and don't know who I am, my name's Kyle, also known as Alientude. I review swords on YouTube. This stream is mostly going to be me testing out the StreamYard software and seeing if anybody has any questions that they want me to answer. I really don't have anything whatsoever planned for this stream because if I have something I really want to talk about, I'll record a video rather than just do a live stream on it. So I'm hoping that some people will come on and see and have questions for me or just come by to say hello. I don't see any comments yet. I don't see anybody in the stream, but there might be some people there. So if you're there and you can hear me and you want to say hello, please. Hello, Jenny. That's a good test, at least. Hello, Frank Knox. And wow, thank you for the donation. I really, really appreciate that. I certainly didn't expect that. I have not seen anybody review that Claymore yet. Let me pull that up and let's take a look at that one. I don't remember seeing a Highland Claymore from Arms and Armor. So you're talking, let's see, Claymore. Oh, this one you're talking about. I certainly have not seen this one be reviewed. Sinister Swordsman just said that Scalagrim had one. I don't know every single sword he's reviewed, so you might want to check out that. Yeah, that's an interesting one to look at. Probably not particularly my cup of tea. I kind of like somewhat more compact swords. That sword might be a bit much for my personal taste. But on the topic of claymores, there is the Kingston Arms Claymore that was released fairly recently. I am interested in reviewing that one. I have eyed it, and maybe at some point I might end up buying that and reviewing it. But this Arms and Armor one, not that I'm aware, but check out Scalagrim's channel, like Sinister Swordsman said. Maybe he did review it. Oh, you reviewed it. Okay. Bad leather work. So good sword, but bad leather work. So the interesting thing about Arms and Armor, this is something I found out recently, is that they do their leather grips very differently than pretty much anybody else. Apparently, they take the leather, they stitch it before it's even on the grip, and then they pull it onto the grip and compress it onto the grip. It's a very different style of doing it that is still historically accurate. I have to agree with that comment that I don't like it particularly. It's not a style of grip that I like. And I've handled a few of their swords when I was at Valley of the Sun. They had several of their swords, and the leather, it was definitely the weakest part of the swords that I handled there. Luckily, it's not too hard to either redo the leather yourself or have somebody else do it, and it wouldn't be terribly expensive when you're talking about a $1,600 sword. So Frank, you said you own this sword. How flexible is it? I'm kind of curious about that. With that long of a sword, I'm curious. Is it like almost floppy, or does it stay relatively rigid? Pretty flexible, somewhat rigid. Yeah, that's kind of what I would expect on one of that a sword of that size. It's a 40-inch sword. Yeah, that's gonna be it's probably a lenticular cross section, I'm guessing, towards the tip. No, this one looks like it's most kind of a soft flattened diamond. It's kind of hard to see there on the picture, but yeah, swords of that length usually end up getting pretty thin out towards the tip to make sure that they're still balanced well. So that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the really big swords. Is I tend to prefer more rigid swords, and that is that and I find them definitely a little harder to control. Well, electric tape will certainly work. It may not particularly look very historic or anything like that, but honestly, if what you care about is getting the grip to be comfortable for you at an easy and affordable way to do it, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Do you cut with your sword? While I'm waiting for Frank to respond, Sinister Swordsman, I know you comment on pretty much every video. You've got to have a question for me at some point. So Frank, how does it cut? I'm curious. I'm betting it's a hell of a cutter. Handle's too thin, but it's an awesome sword. Yeah, I something just looking at the profile of it, not a lot of profile taper, probably gets pretty thin out. I bet it is a heck of a cutter and probably a lot of fun to use. Well, thank you, Sinister Swordsman. If anybody, I don't know if anybody else has joined, but if you have a sword that you know I own that you would like to me to grab, if it's easily within my grasp, I will do so. I'm not going to really talk about swords much that I haven't reviewed because I prefer to let the review do the talking. But if it's a sword I've already reviewed, I certainly don't mind talking about it some more. And if anybody has just joined us, we're looking at right now the Arms and Armor Highland Claymont War sword because Frank Knox asked if or was talking to us about it. Show us what you got. Well, I've got one of my newest acquisitions here. This is the Windless Black Prince. And I'm not going to really talk too much about it because I haven't reviewed it yet. But this is, if you've watched or you read my post on it, I did talk about it a little bit. This is absolutely 100% a copy of the Windless Royal Armory's late 14th century sword, I think is what they call it. It is 100% a copy at half the price. I don't know if that's something that Windless got approval to do. It makes me a little leery about whether or not this is Did they get approval from both Matt Easton and Royal Armories to do this? I don't know. I have no way of knowing. Mr. Park, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce your name because I would butcher it. Thank you. I really do appreciate the kind words. What sword currently in my collection am I in love with the most? I will go grab it. Right now, it's this sword. This is my Sterling Armory writing sword. I did a review of this one year and a half, 2 years ago, I want to say, something like that. And I'm in love with this one because it is light, nimble, and it surprised the heck out of me recently with when I took it out to cut and gave me pretty much the best cutting session I've had in a very long time. And it's got me wondering now, should I definitely want to try this sword onto Tommy, but is it possible this sword would actually take over as my competition cutter? I wouldn't be surprised. Hello to King Homeschool Potion Seller. Have you seen the new couple swords from Todd Cutler? Yes, I have. And I do find those very interesting. Let's pull them up. Let's see. Swords. So of the two that he released recently, I am most interested in this one, the Degen, I don't know how to pronounce that. This one just, there's almost nothing else like it on the market. So that's why it immediately caught my attention. And I really like the way the hilt looks. The blade looks like it has a little bit of, I'm not sure if that's a fuller or a hexagonal cross section. But yeah, I am definitely intrigued by all of the Todd Cutler sword line. I definitely want to get one at some point. I definitely want to get a review of one on my channel at some point. Do I have any pets? Yes, I have two pets. Both of them are cats. We have Paradise and Marilyn, and they are an absolute joy and an absolute terror, alternatively. Any ETA on my Soshin? What Soshin are you talking about? I'm not sure. Oh, the Taisutki. Taisutki said that it would be a couple months for them to make it before they would get it to me, and that was a few weeks ago. So it's going to be several months before I even receive it. That's a cool one. Sterling Armory is killer. Sterling Armory is the most underrated sword maker on the market right now, and I'm actually right now in the middle of my reviewing a two-handed falchion by Chris Fields of Sterling Armory. And it's something I talked about in that review, that Chris Fields deserves more recognition. And if you can afford that price range of sword, no shade on you if you can't, but if you can and you haven't checked out Chris Fields' work, you are doing yourself a disservice. There we go. More about Sterling Armory. Yes, they are absolutely knocking it out of the park. All three of the members. Chris Fields is the one that does the most cut focused and cutting competition focused, and his work has started to show up in cutting competitions. My hunch is it's going to continue to show up more and more and more because he is a cutter. He's taken gold at advanced cutting before. He is an outstanding cutter, and it shows in the swords that he makes. Yep. Yeah, Ryan has nailed it exactly. And they all have their own unique style. And I finally have something from each of the makers at Sterling Armory. I have far more from Chris Fields, and I have a commission with Chris Fields, which is pretty rare. It's hard to get him to take a commission, but I have a commission with him going. So I have a lot more from Chris than from Colton or Josh, but I am going to continue buying from them because they just continue to knock it out of the park. And Ryan, you got one of the prettiest falchions or Swiss sabers. I'm not sure exactly what you even call it a Kriegsmesser. That one that you got from Colton is just, I could not afford to pick it up more than I did because I could not afford to buy it. That giant Viking sword. Yes, the Jotun Nine Slayer. That was a lot of fun. That video was a lot of fun to put together. We went through a couple different versions for both Josh and I were happy with how it came out. That was a lot of fun to do. And keep an eye out for future interesting collaborations with Josh in the future. Maybe in about a little less than 12 months. Make sure I didn't miss any chat. Well, I missed this one for this is Jenny. This is everybody. That Jenny is my wife. So, what's my newest sword? You already know the answer to that, or maybe you don't. I don't know. But this is my most recent sword. This is the Maciej Kopcic Art of Sword Making custom order that I have been waiting on for almost 2 years now, and I'm not going to talk about this one pretty much at all because I have put it on my review schedule much faster than I normally do because I want to get a review out on this because of topicality. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out Kane Shen's channel. Will I continue to buy from Valiant Armory? Absolutely. Valiant Armory is also completely underrated in the market, especially in the cutting market and the HEMA market. When I went to Combat Con last year, that was the first year that Valiant Armory had been at Combat Con. And the number of times I heard HEMA people, the people who are more into the fencing, walk past the booth and look at Valiant Armory and say, is that Albion? And had never even heard of Valiant Armory. And it just hurt me to hear that because they are absolutely on a level with Albion. And their Vision line is outstanding. I will absolutely continue to buy from them. I want to get a Vision Talaro at some point. And also the Exeter, I didn't have a lot of interest in that sword too much, but then towards the end of Combat Con, I picked one of them up. And if any of you have ever picked up an Angus Trim 12A sword, they have a very unique feel. They do not feel like anybody else's 12As. I picked up that Exeter from the Vision Exeter, and it immediately said to me, this is an H-Rim 12A, which is a really cool feel, especially with how ornate the hilt work is. What did I commission from Chris? I commissioned an arming sword for cutting competition. I wanted one that has Chris's edge on it because Chris puts a very good edge on his swords. And I really like some of his wide blade 14, 16, 18 types. I told him I don't care which of those types, leave it up to him, but I wanted a wide blade, 2.5 to 2 3/4 pounds, and around 28 to 30 inches. I'd have to look at the specs to see exactly what I said, but I wanted a competition cutting arming sword with the Stingray grip that he's been experimenting with recently because I really like the way that feels. Which sword do I have from Colton? I have this absolutely outstanding 20A triple fuller side ring S-guard sword. This is an absolutely gorgeous sword. I picked this up at Fright Fight last year. I couldn't really afford it, but I couldn't afford to not buy it. Sonny is absolutely an outstanding guy and humble, and more than anybody I can think of in the business, goes out of his way for customer service. Not to say that other people don't provide great customer service. Sonny takes that a step above and is just an outstanding guy. Yeah, so that falchion was at Valley of the Sun, and I saw it, and I said, I am not picking that up. I cannot afford to pick it up because I know I'll fall in love with it. And I managed to stick to that. And then they brought it to Combat Con, or not to Combat Con, to SoCal Sword Fight, and I still managed to avoid picking it up and avoid picking it up and avoid picking it up. And then I picked it up, and I was like, oh God, I can't handle this. I can't move it around. I'm gonna fall in love, and I can't buy it. So I'm very glad that you ended up buying it. I'm surprised it took so long for it to sell. How much does a scabbard cost for Matthew Cross, and does he do full custom scabbards? So his scabbards are, I believe he said they're around 300 to 400. I have one in the works from him right now, but yeah, I think it's around 300 to 400. When you say full custom, do you mean like full leather tooling? Because at this point, I think he's still pretty early in his leather working and tooling stage. So I don't know how much of that he does. I know he will do some stamping, but I don't know if he does any tooling or suspension. At this point, I think he's still going for just a very basic wood core leather wrap. If he can add a chape if he has like one from Todd Cutler or something like that. Oh, yes. I think didn't he give him a B rating? I don't know. Yeah, there's a whole lot going on with Maciej Kopciuch. I don't want to get into that right now. And yeah, there's a whole lot going on there. They look thin and very comfortable. Yes, the way Matthew Cross has been making the scabbards, he takes just like very thin, I think it's airplane model veneers of wood, glues them together, and then molds them to the shape of the sword. So it's very, very thin core, which is accurate to historical swords from what I understand. And it makes for a very light and thin scabbard. I'm really looking forward to the one I have in the works right now. I'm especially looking forward to that sword too. Maybe B, but yeah. Again, not going to talk about Maciej any more than I already have. There's way too much to go into, and I need to make sure that I do not speak out of turn. Is the wait on new sword orders getting any better? Things have been weird lately. I think you're going to have to specify from who, because everybody has a different turnaround time. Like the sword I'm commissioning from Chris Fields of Sterling Armory, I talked to him about that right after SoCal Sword Fight, and he's hoping to have it done by Combat Con. So that's only like a 5-month turnaround. But that's also unusual to get a commission from Chris. Wolfland, did we miss Wolfland? If so, I will go back and double check that. And if we did miss them, yeah, I think we probably did miss them. I'll add them to the list of makers that we missed. My vague plan on the whole tier ranking is to do one every year, and that way we can add in the ones that we missed. For me, it would have been an NA because I have no experience with them. Why the heck are Dark Sword Armory swords so pretty, but so damn dull? So, DSA, they're pretty because there is definitely a strong sense of aesthetic that their designer has. I believe their designer is Yale, and he has a strong sense of style, and some of his swords are absolutely gorgeous. They definitely don't seem to be able to, I won't say don't seem to be able to. They do not seem willing to make them sharp enough to be able to truly cut with it. But for more on DSA, check out my marathon of a review. So I don't think that the delay is necessarily on a lot of stuff. Like Albion is up to over 2 years at this point. There's only so many swords that they can make because they're not increasing their business size. You know, they're happy, I think, with their business size. And doesn't seem to me like people, other makers are biting into their business much at all. At least not from what I see when I go to these various cons. I like your approach. If you know, oh yes, about the tier ranking. Yeah, I, I don't want to rank somebody with not enough experience. That not that there's anything wrong with Keynes, for instance, his extensive, what, like almost 5 hours videos where he was talking about a lot of makers. That's a perfectly valid way of doing it. And I have no problem with him doing it that way, just not the way I felt comfortable doing it personally. So referring specifically to Albion, Arms and Armor, and Valiant Armor, yeah, Albion, their backlog certainly has not been helped by the announcement of the price hike, because I know for a fact they got a lot of orders in before that price hike, so that improved or increased their backlog even more. I imagine around in about a year and a half, when we're going to get to 2 years from the price hike, people are going to be like, "Where's my sword?" And it's still going to be waiting because there's going to be so many orders as people were placing them right before the price hike. I don't think Albion's really going to lower their wait times much at all. Valiant Armory is kind of a odd one because I don't really know how they go about making theirs. They do some in batches, but they also can crank out stuff very quickly at times. And sometimes their wait is around 6 to 10 months. I think that's around where it is now, but yeah. And then Arms and Armor, I've actually never placed an order with, actually, no, I placed an order way back when I was still, looked like I was going to be doing more HEMA training. There was a club that I thought I was going to be going to. I did order their Fetter short, and that took several months, but that wasn't too bad. I kind of disagree with you there, Ryan, but I totally respect that opinion. I disagree because I suck at sharpening. I don't really have the time to learn how to get good at sharpening. And I hate having to deal with I live out in the middle of the desert in Southern California near nobody who does sharpening. So I have to ship swords to get sharpened. And that's just such a pain in the ass. So yeah, I would much prefer if swords would come truly ready to compete with, or even if it's not that quite that level, up to Valiant Armory's level. I find Valiant Armory puts a pretty good edge, not razor sharp, not up to competition cutting level, but not too far off. I think they are a step above what Albion offers. Albion is sharp enough to cut, but they do no favors to you, in my experience. Yeah, absolutely. Albion has not just the reputation, they've got the track record of outstanding swords, and they have the name of Peter Johnson as the designer of their swords, and that carries a lot of weight. With Valiant Armory getting Angus Trim as the designer for the Vision line, that maybe that'll help and get them out there more. I did contact and ask, but he straight up said 2 years, and he said no flex. No, Mike is not going to flex on that. And yeah, I'm guessing 2 years is going to be, if you're looking at placing an order around that now, I would guess 2 years is actually optimistic. I personally would expect, if I placed an order now, I would expect it to be more like 26 to 28 months personally. Is there anything that surprised you in others ranked Euro sword makers? Yeah, and I'm going to have to go back and think about that for a minute. There was some things that I was surprised. Going back to, once again, the Keynes essay, his verbal essay on Kopchiach, and then ranking him, I think it was a B, either a B or an A. That surprised me. I did not expect him to rank him that high after that long talking about just all that. So yeah, that would be the biggest surprise for me. Nothing too crazy, but paper cutting at least. I agree there. And This is something I talk about in my reviews recently. It's not even that I'm testing the sword to make sure that it can cut paper, although I prefer it will cut paper. But I want to provide context for how sharp swords are, and paper is a really good medium for that because everybody has access to it. Not everybody has access to tatami or has the ability to go out and cut water balls. Maybe they live in an apartment. Maybe they don't have the ability. I don't know, but everybody can grab a piece of printer paper and test the edge of their sword. So it's a really standard type of cutting material. That's one of the primary reasons I do that. Yes, Peter Johnson is a very good guy. He has offered to chat with me pretty much anytime I have an Albion 2 review and I want to talk to him about the design process or the historical nature of that model or pretty much anything. He is incredibly generous with his time, very nice, and honestly, a very humble individual too. I try not to bother him too much on that because I don't want to bug him and take away his time. He is a very busy man. Yeah, I think I'm done talking about the Kopchiach in the tier ranking. So if I see any more comments about that, I'm just going to move on from that. Can you tell me when you were denied to handle a sword by us and where you were? We haven't retailed since 2001 and Ilya hasn't worked here. I am sorry. I think you're misunderstanding. I have never attempted to handle a sword from you. I've never seen one of your swords in person. Are you thinking maybe of Kane? I'm not sure, but yeah, I have not reached out to you or anything. So thank you for joining the stream, though. I do really appreciate it. I was just cutting 10 minutes ago. I was thinking about cutting today, but then I decided I wanted to prep for this live stream more. Yeah, I know who you are. I definitely know. I've watched a ton of your videos. I professionally sharpen knives, so I really know about cutting paper. That is true. It is a different skill, although they are certainly related. That's for sure. Hey, no problem. But yeah, I'm not sure which of Baltimore Knife and Sword members I'm talking to here, but yeah, I don't think I said anything. I think I just said Baltimore Knife and Sword, no experience, and put you into NA because I haven't reached out to you and I've never been to an event that you were at or anything like that. So yeah, I think you might be mistaking me for maybe Kane or maybe Matthew Jensen. I'm not sure. Sorry. But I will, yeah, probably. I will say I would absolutely love to review one of your swords if you're interested. You can find my email address in the about page of my channel. If you do want to send me something, I would be thrilled to review one of your swords. Shameless plug there. What's my day job? I work as a system administrator for local government. So, dealing with network accounts, identity, security, and email security, that kind of thing. So I'm a geek every way, shape, and form in terms of liking fantasy, liking swords, liking computers, video games. If there's a nerdy hobby, I probably like it, with the only exception being anime. It's just not something that I've ever really connected with. That was Kane. Okay. Yeah. right. Anything else I want to talk about? Looks like questions might be drying up a little bit. I already got a lot more than I thought I was going to get, so that's been good. Um, Anything else I want to talk about? Trying to think if there's any new swords on the market that caught my eye that I might want to share. The one thing that sword that I have been wanting to buy and have never seemed to really get around to it is one of these two, the Gustav or the Gunther. Both of these look absolutely lovely. I think I would probably go with the Gunther, even though I think I like the Gustav, just the looks of it better. And I really like the idea of a compact messer as that kind of everyday carry that you would see in medieval and early Renaissance Germany. But the Gustav has seen a lot of attention from other sword reviewers. I don't really remember seeing the Gunther at all. So I think if I were to order one, it would be the Gunther. I cover up Area 51 now. No, that's Arizona, I think, isn't it? Not California. So what live stream software am I using? This is StreamYard. I think you can see it right up in the top right corner of the stream. I'm just using a free account. And I'm using this because it's what Matthew Jensen uses, and I've been a guest on his stream a few times, and it seems to work pretty well. And therefore, I wanted to give it a shot. I have some ideas for some other live streams, potentially some collaborations with Unsheathed Sword Reviews, and I wanted to do a test of the StreamYard software where I wasn't just a guest. I wanted to be the host to see if it worked out. I think it's working pretty well. Do I own any Todd Cutler daggers? Yes, I do. I have right here the Twisted Medieval Rondel, I think is the name. I don't remember. I love this thing. It's such a hefty dagger. It is absolutely tells you right up front, this is an anti-armor close-in weapon that is designed to get into the gaps in armor and kill somebody. Then I also have this Quillen dagger that I don't remember. I think this is the 14th century Quillen dagger. I don't remember. And I have a custom scabbard with it that this is all part of the Gilded Rose adventuring set that I have. And there is a review of that on my channel. It's paired with Albion Mercenary and an eating set by Boris Bedrosov. And I agree. Todd Cutler daggers are great. That's what you want us to think. I have one so close to that. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Sorry. If you get a messer from Lance Connect or don't get the stag antler, it's pretty to look at, but uncomfortable to use. Once again, thank you for the donation, Frank. That is very generous of you. Yeah, I am not a huge fan of antler grips. I have one dagger, this Bowie knife that has a stag handle. This was designed by the Levin Lance, and he ended up gifted this dagger to me. And it's pretty comfortable. It's not what I personally like. I would absolutely go with a wood grip, not a stag antler. That is nice. Love Todd Cutler's work. Yes. Oh, and by the way, I said custom scabbard for this. This scabbard is the work of Stephen Huerta. Absolutely check out his scabbard work if you haven't. Yes, I almost, yeah. Both of these daggers are some of Todd Cutler's most popular ones, I think, for good reason. They are just outstanding. Would I recommend Todd's Workshop or DBK for Albion scabbards? Well, yes. The short answer is yes. Todd's Workshop is much cheaper scabbards, and that's saying something because his scabbards range like what, $700 to $1,000 around there. But DBK scabbards start at $2,200, I believe, for absolute bare bones scabbard. So but yes, I recommend both of them. Absolutely. Todd's Workshop can get you the scabbard in a few months, generally speaking. DBK has, the last I heard, a 3-year wait list. And I have one scabbard from each of them. I have a commission with DBK that is coming up in probably several months, actually. It's coming up pretty soon. Um, so I obviously like DBK's work. I have, like I said, I have another scabbard from him. And I do also really like the scabbard I have from Todd's Workshop. I absolutely plan on getting another one from Todd at some point for an Albion. In terms of which would be better, it depends on what you're going for. DBK is kind of on another level than everybody else. The only other person I can think of who makes as outstandingly detailed of scabbards as he does is Fable Blades. And that's a very, very different proposition than what you get from Brian at DBK. So if you want the Rolls Royce of scabbards, if you want the absolute top tier scabbard maker, Brian's going to absolutely knock it out of the park. And the sky is the limit for what he can do on your scabbards. But you're going to wait for it and you're going to pay for it. Todd's Workshop makes very nice, a little plain scabbards, although he can do more decorative work. I don't know how much that adds to it. But the short answer of this long rambling answer is I recommend both of them. I like the Falk anyway. That's the Falke. Yeah, I don't really like the profile of that one. I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah. Let's see. Share screen. Yeah, the Falke, I think is how to pronounce it. Not really my favorite. There's something about the profile that just doesn't quite speak to me. It's absolutely a good sword. I mean, Lance Connect Emporium does great work, and Skylagrim had very favorable review of this sword. If he did he do a full review, or he might have just done an impressions video? I don't remember. But yeah, not quite my cup of tea, but yeah, very nice sword. Todd scabbards are freaking great. Yes, they are. Fable blades are extremely expensive. Yeah, that's an understatement. I think to get a sword and scabbard from him, you're looking at a bare minimum $10,000, perhaps more. I do have a dream sword I would like to have him make for me because I am a fantasy fan and I haven't seen him make it yet, and I hope he doesn't, because my vague plan is when I retire from my job, I will kind of want my retirement gift to myself to be a sword and scabbard from him. We'll see how that works out. Yeah. My scabbard with Brian, what the commission I have coming up in a few months is going to be, the budget is around $3,200, and you get a pretty decent amount of customizations with that, but there is a lot more. Like, I don't know if you've seen Kane Shen's scabbard for his prints. That thing is beyond ornate. And it's kind of similar to this one here, but even more ornate than this. And that thing probably costs $5,000 to $6,000. I'm guessing you can go. You can go. The sky's the limit for how much you can get, what budget you can give Brian, and just how gorgeous it's going to be. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the look of the Falke. It's just not. I just don't really particularly like it. Fable blades are just as nice in person. Oh, you are a lucky man, Ryan. I would love to try them out. It's not for everyone. Doesn't have the giant knife. It's not even the giant knife look that appeals to me in a Kriegsmesser. In fact, that's actually one of the things I'm not a huge fan of in Kriegsmessers. The Albion Connect that I have is the Mark II, which has the encapsulated tang, so the tang is not visible, and I prefer that. But on the Falke, it's specifically the blade profile just doesn't quite do it for me. And at that price, that one, let's see, if I remember right, that's like around $1,500. Yeah, wow, I nailed that. That's with a scabbard and buy knives. But yeah, at that price, I have to really love the look of the sword to want to buy it. I do dream of having a master sword from Fable Blades. Good luck, because I think he said that he's not interested in making any more master swords or Heron Mark swords or any of the swords that he's made a bunch of already. And I don't think I have ever seen a Fable Blades on the secondhand market. They got to come up from time to time, but it is not common at all. Seeing it makes me feel sad. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Yeah, it's money. Yeah. Yeah. I have the Connect. Yes, I am lucky. So the way that happened, I was waking up and getting ready for work. I work from home. I was at home getting ready for work, and a friend of mine on Facebook messaged me like 3 times in a row. And I was like, what? I just woke up. I don't want to deal with this. And I went and checked, and he said, dude, Cult of Athena has a Connect right now in stock. It was a used one. I was like, thank you. I went and quickly bought it. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it at the time, but it didn't matter. I was buying it anyways. So I don't think he's in the chat, but Sword Friend Brian, actually, my friend Brian, he's not just Sword Friend. Friend Brian, thank you once again for sourcing me the Connect. It was, I couldn't believe that I managed to get it. I never expected to get one. And it was just pure dumb luck on my part, honestly, that he noticed it that quickly and got it to me. I know somebody else was in the bit. I think if I remember right, Kane Shen was in the process of trying to check out with the Connect when I bought it. So I knew it wouldn't last. Connect, please show us. Of course. Here it is. Like I said, you can see it's got the tang, the hidden tang, so it's the Mark II. And it is a used one. Somebody did do a sharpening job on it and didn't do a very good job. So the edge is could be refined a little bit on here, but yeah, it is the iconic Kriegsmesser, and I am very, very lucky to have it. I also know if I ever wanted to sell it, it would sell instantly. It's not going to be sold. Late to the party, you guys just discussed some Sterling Armory swords. Yes, we have discussed Sterling Armory probably more than anybody else on the stream, but I don't mind discussing them again if you have any questions about them, because like I mentioned earlier in the stream, and I'm mentioning in the review I'm working on now, Sterling Armory deserves more recognition out there, and I am happy anytime I can give them more of that recognition. Yeah, I agree, Faded X. That is one beautiful, it really is. Yes, I get a number of people saying that all the time, that they're jealous of my collection. I'm lucky that I have a job that pays me well enough that I can afford extremely nice swords. I'm lucky enough to have a wife who is understanding enough of my hobby to not mind me spending so much of my spare money on swords, and also who is frankly an enabler. I love you, honey, but yes, you absolutely enable me at buying swords when I really shouldn't be buying them. I am very lucky, but at the same time, there's people out there whose collection just make my jaw drop also. Why has Chris not gotten more recognition? I am not sure, other than I have a few ideas. Primarily, especially Chris, is one person making swords. He makes 1 to 2 dozen swords a year, I would guess, somewhere around there. So there's not a ton of swords out there. Compare that to Albion, who I think, my guess, and this is a guess, this is absolutely not based in knowledge. My guess is they're making around 70 to 100 swords a month. somewhere around there. Chris is making 1 to 2 swords a month, maybe somewhere around there. So that extreme level of difference in production makes a big difference in terms of, like, maybe say comparing him to Angus Trim. Angus Trim, who is not particularly productive in terms of making a lot of stuff, still makes more swords than Chris does, I believe. Chris has a full-time job. He's a NASA engineer. I'm not sure if he actually works for NASA. I think he works for Honeywell. He's a space engineer. He's a rocket engineer, something like that. And that's a full-time job. So the fact that he can still make just utterly outstanding swords is, and in any quantity, is absolutely amazing. So that's a big reason that his work is not particularly recognized. And I think it's starting to, he's developing that reputation now. He's making a concerted effort to get to stuff like SoCal Sword Fight and Combat Con. And he's entering cutting competitions too, which is absolutely helping because he's medaling in these cutting competitions with his swords. So people are looking at them and saying, oh, that sword's actually pretty good. Yes, he is absolutely a great guy. Just a lot of fun to hang out with and chat with. And if anybody here, if you haven't, check out Sterling Armory's channel on YouTube. They do vlogs and podcast chat style things. And he had a really great series on different oak shot typologies. Make sure you check out his channel, Sterling Armory, and subscribe if you're interested in his stuff. Makes sense. Thank you. Atrim has calmed down a bit. Yeah, Gus is getting old, and I believe his current plan is to retire sometime in the next 2 years. He's been saying he's going to retire for quite a while, but it sounds to me like he's getting closer and closer to that. So his work has, not his work, his quantity of product has definitely gone down. Turn with Adrian Paul for, yes. He did the sword experience with the Highlander stuff, and I think Chris actually got one of the ways he started in the sword business was making katana and making training katana out of aluminum. So he's got a long history of katana stuff, which makes sense with Adrian Paul. Yes. Unfortunately, right now, the only way to engage with Sterling Armory is, the primary way is to go to the events that they go to. And they go to SoCal Sword Fight, Combat Con. They were at Fright Fight and Valley of the Sun. They go to, there's a Ren Fair in Florida. I can't remember the name of, but they go to that. And I think they try to go to a few other Ren Fairs and stuff. The other way, that's the best way. That's where they take swords and have swords available. If swords don't sell at those events, they make them available, but the only way to make them, to really get in contact with them, is Facebook. So if you don't like Facebook, I cannot blame you there. Meta is a troublesome company, we'll put it that way. But there's a pretty thriving community of sword people on Facebook, and it's really one of the most prolific communities, and that's the best place to get a hold of Sterling Armory. And like Ryan said, they do still have, actually, do they still have any? I think if they have any left, I think they might have one left, because I've seen people posting new sword day of the Sterling Armory swords. So if they have any, it's like 1 or 2 left. Yes. Yeah, Chris is an outstanding cutter. And you know what's crazy about the fact that he medals pretty much every time is he pretty much doesn't practice. He doesn't cut tatami except at cutting competitions for the most part, because he doesn't have the time to do it, from what I understand. So he's not even practicing, and he's taking medals. The dude is just, he is incredibly talented at making swords and at cutting. Try to get a trim ASAP. Absolutely. Anybody who has a sword collection, who can afford the price range. And again, I said this earlier, no shame on you if you can't afford it. If you can only afford budget swords, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But if you can afford the more upper range, the $1,000 range, if you should absolutely try to own an Atrim if you can. Bay Area Ren Fair in Tampa. That's his local show. I think it's called like the Hagerstown Ren Fair, something like that. Yeah. Any commentary on Dark Sword? So I did a overly long review on Dark Sword Armory sword, and that was the worst sword I have ever handled. And the problem that I have with Dark Sword Armory is that they don't seem to know what makes swords good. There's massive inconsistency in the product you get from them. The sword that I reviewed weighed in, I think it was around 2 pounds, 12 ounces, something like that. Actually, I can look that up. So 2 pounds, 12 ounces. I can't talk and look at this up at the same point. So give me 1 second. So this is the sword I reviewed from them, and it weighed 2 pounds, 12 ounces. Let me hide that comment so you can actually see the weight. This sword, I have seen reports of people who got this model that it weighed over 4 pounds. So that's a 20-ounce difference in the same model. And that's because they don't make the swords, is my strong belief. They contract them out to a variety of forges, so you never know what you're going to get. But central to my point of not knowing what makes swords good is, while some of their designs are outstanding, some of the designs just have horrible things that prevent them from being used properly. Like this sword, there is a protrusion of the guard right here that is not a noggle, nothing like that. It's just a triangle jutting out here that prevents you from resting your thumb on the blade, which is a big part of German longsword techniques, and I believe a lot of other styles of longsword techniques. And it completely prevents you from doing that. That is what I'm talking about when they say they don't understand what makes swords good, because you would not make a sword of this type and then not make it in a way that you can't do incredibly common technique. And furthering that, the Kriegsmesser they have where the noggle is just a complete disaster. Check out Matthew Jensen's review of that. Absolutely no understanding of how a messer should be made. So there's more, but I have a 51-minute video about this, and I go over my thoughts on Dark Sword Armory in pretty exhaustive detail in that. So check that out. Let's see. You won't be disappointed with Sterling and Atrim. Yep, 100% agree, Jimmy. And speak of the devil, here is Chris Fields. Chris, we've been talking about you a lot, and I have been singing your praises. You're welcome. Doing the castings, they aren't doing it in-house. Much of the casting is very good. Yeah, their casting of their hilt components does seem to be pretty consistent. The mounting of them, not so much, but the actual casting quality does seem pretty good. That would be interesting. And Chris, we have a few left at the moment. So they do still have, Sterling Armory still does have at least a few swords left and available. So if you are interested, and you should be interested, check out Sterling Armory on their Facebook and buy one if you can afford it. Let's see, that one. That's one more. I'm not sure if you're talking about this one I got on screen or the Kriegsmesser, but I would highly recommend you don't buy either of them. Honestly, I would not buy from Dark Sword Armory personally. If he's hanging up. Oh, I think you're talking about Gus and Atrims. Yeah, he's been talking recently about retiring sometime in the next year and a half, 2 years. His plan is to have swords in storage that he can still sell to supplement his retirement, but how long that'll last, I don't know. Now, one thing that is good is that it seems to be that the plan is for Valiant Armory to take up the A-trim designs and do vision line swords with a lot of them. So there's a continuation of Angus Trim swords, but it won't be by Angus Trim anymore. It'll be by Sunny, who is also absolutely outstanding. Chris, that sword I just got, phenomenal. Jimmy, you gotta tell me which sword is that? That 18B with the kind of like grayed blackened hilt. I'm curious if that's who it is. Your Dark Sword review made me cross them off my buy list. Good, frankly, good. I don't like to trash on a company, but Dark Sword Armory does not try to improve themselves. They have been at it for a long time and they aren't making improvements. They are not taking feedback and improving. And that's my biggest, honestly, more than anything else, that's my biggest complaint with them. That was nonsense. Yeah, no, I got you. The price is going to skyrocket. Yeah, that's definitely possible. That's definitely possible. Once his swords are no longer made new, then they become a limited commodity. And yeah, I could see prices on them going up eventually. Kind of like how the Kinect, for instance, I could sell it for more than it sold new if I was going to sell it. I'm not going to sell it, but I could. Any future Valiant Armory reviews? Nothing specifically planned right now. I absolutely will own more Valiant Armory swords in the future. Sunny was talking about maybe loaning me one of their new Ranger Vision swords, but that has not happened yet. It might happen. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I think, yeah, I'm not going to be able to find that sword right now very easily. But yeah, that 18B that you got, that's a gorgeous sword. Yes. You have Carrie in the house. Yes. Absolutely. Baltimore Knife and Sword has a lot of very interesting stuff. Personally, I am not into the stage reenactment, which is what a lot of their stock models is stage combat and reenactment stuff, and that's not something I'm interested in. But at the same time, you can get some of the most gorgeous stuff possible from Baltimore Knife and Sword. So, absolutely, definitely a very well-known and very well-regarded maker. You say Viking swords are really pretty, but yeah, too many horror stories. Yeah, their casting on their Einar I think is what it's called, is very, very pretty. They have some very nice designs again, but I suppose if all you're really interested in is looks, then Dark Sword Armory is certainly a much more attractive option. But if you're interested in using it, yeah. I would say King Homeschool, I would say they are pretty much at an equal level of fit and finish. There's slight differences. Their grip leather feels a little bit different, but not a lot. But overall, they are pretty much at equal levels of fit and finish. The way when people have asked me about, should I buy an Albion, should I buy Valiant Armory? The way I've always kind of described it is with Albion, you go for Albion for consistency and for historical plausibility, designs that will fit right in with the historical record. Valiant Armory takes a little bit more liberties with their designs, goes a little bit outside of that historical nature, but they are right there with Albion in quality. Valiant Armory does a sharper edge, in my opinion, and generally speaking, their final beveling, the apple-seated geometry that they do, is a little more blended into the sword than Albion is at times. Sometimes Albion blends them in perfectly. Sometimes Albion, you can see the polish is a little bit different on the final edge. Very, very minor things there, though. Yeah, I can imagine, Carrie, what with all the Man-at-Arms Reforged and all the just absolutely nutty stuff that Ilya has put out. They have they have made your stuff incredibly attractive to buyers. I am not surprised it sells almost immediately. I would love to. I'm really impressed with Valiant how they stepped up. Yeah, and that's the other thing is Valiant and Sunny and Zach also are improving all the time. The scabbard work that Zach has been doing I have watched it grow incredibly in the last couple years. He is making much better scabbards than he did even a few years ago. And Sunny is always refining the designs, doing little tweaks to improve his swords, and always looking for feedback. They are vastly improving, and yeah. And then when you can add in that they have the Angus trim designs for the Vision line, really the sky's the limit for Valiant Armory if they can continue that upward growth. They should be in video games. They look cool. Dark Sword Armory, yes, yeah. That's not a bad description. They do have a look about them of video game swords. Chris, thanks for joining. Once again, everybody, check out Sterling Armory on Facebook. If you can find a way to buy something from him, do it. You will not regret it. All right, guys. This has actually gone on longer than I thought. I didn't think I was going to get really almost any questions. We've been going for about an hour. I have to work tomorrow, so I do need some time to wind down before heading to bed and getting up early and getting to work. So I am going to call this stream here. Thank you so much for joining. This was a lot more engagement than I was expecting, and maybe this shows that there is a appetite for live streams from me. I didn't think there was going to be enough of an audience to do it, but this worked out really well. I had a lot of fun, and keep an eye out. My next review this is the Sterling Armory stream. My next review is a Sterling Armory two-handed falchion that's coming out not this coming Friday, the Friday after that. Make sure you are on the lookout for that. Until next time, Aileen Tuda out.